All right, so it's November 2016. We're here at the Lillestrøm Alternative Festival. We just finished a little meditation with you, and your name is Gen Kelsang Tubchen.
Yeah, and I use the last name as my first name.
The last name is your first name.
So Gen means teacher.
Yep.
And Kelsang I received from the person who ordained me as a Buddhist nun. And
Okay.
Tubchen is like the special name that you get. So there's a lot of Kelsangs.
Yeah.
So I use Tubchen.
So how did you get started with Buddhism?
It began when I was 19.
Yeah.
So I'm 42 now.
Okay.
And I didn't know that I was looking for more meaning in my life, but in retrospect, I was. And I took off traveling at the age of 19. I was supposed to go to art school, but I went traveling, and I went to a lot of Buddhist places and looked at a lot of beautiful Buddhist imagery, and was reading everything, all sorts of different things, like A Brief History of Time, Women Who Run with the Wolves, New Age stuff, Krishnamurti, Buddhism, all sorts of things. So that was really the sort of beginning, and I was quite impressed by the Buddhist cultures that I went to. The people seemed happy, noticeably happy, even though they were quite poor in those areas. And then I came back from that trip, and I did explore meditation. But it wasn't until a few years later that I really got serious about it. So I think partly I hadn't met quite the right tradition for me at that time. And also I was initially quite scared off by my own mind. So I didn't have enough confidence that beneath the negative minds there was a peaceful mind. And that was something that when I met this tradition, I began to understand better and be able to connect with that, and then work on the difficult minds, but without feeling stuck in them. And also in my mid-20s I got quite sick, and that forced a kind of re-evaluation of my life. So it was at that time that I became more serious about meditation, and it helped me. And I also, because I was quite unwell, I did some retreats. So I did a 3-month silent retreat, and I don't think I would have done those things if I'd been still trying to do the 9 to 5 and so on, but it kind of gave me an opportunity to invest a bit more energy in the inner world. And as I started to get better, then the kind of question came to my mind, well, do I go back to all of that or not?
Yeah.
And it was at that point that I became a Buddhist nun. So I made the decision to make my life, the direction of my life, spiritual. And I wanted to help others, to help others to be free from their suffering, and to make that kind of the main meaning of my life.
Is there like a specific kind of a thing you need to do to become a Buddhist monk? Like, do you have to study so long or achieve something, or what
Not
is
in our tradition. It's really, and you do need to receive the permission of your teacher. So it's not just that you decide. They need to feel that you're ready for that. But in our tradition, monks and nuns and lay people who are not monks and nuns, are equal. It's just a choice that you may find beneficial. To be a monk or a nun. It makes life simpler in a way. You are you're deciding that you want to be less distracted by certain things. And so it does make life simpler, and it can be quite beneficial for helping others. Traditionally, in the Eastern countries, as a monk or a nun, you would have just lived in a monastery, in a cloister, and you would give up everything, and you would live through begging, or through the donations that are made to that monastery. But in our tradition, we call our tradition Kadampa Buddhism, and it's the emphasis is on a modern presentation of this ancient wisdom. So not changing the teachings, but making them relevant and accessible in the modern world. So the ordination as monks and nuns, the meaning is the same, but the outward aspects of it are a little bit different. So we are integrated into society. So you could be a monk or a nun and still work as a nurse or a doctor or a teacher, a of course, many of them choose to help with running the Buddhist centers.
Yeah.
But if you already had children, for example, you could still have a family life, and maybe you would still need to have a job to support them. But inwardly you've chosen this spiritual path.
So what would you say it means to be a Buddhist nun or monk?
It means that you are giving up your attachment to worldly goals, worldly attainments, and you're finding your sense of meaning from the spiritual life. So you're making that clear to yourself. It's called renunciation. It's a mind of renunciation. I'm giving up attachment to worldly things, pleasures and so on. Doesn't mean you never enjoy anything, but you're not chasing it. That's not the meaning of your life. Earning money, having a big house. You've chosen to lead a simpler life, to give up attachment to those things so that you can emphasize the inner spiritual development. You become rich inside. But it makes life a bit simpler. So as part of that, you are not having sexual relationships. And if you think about it, for many people, it's such a huge part of their life. It's about finding the partner, the relationships.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of energy.
Yeah.
And it's not that you're repressing anything. It's that you are enjoying the peace of meditation. It's more at the heart. It's blissful, actually. It's not.
Yeah. So no sexual relationships.
No sexual activity.
So not even with yourself.
No.
No. Okay. And so how does that work?
Well, it's like the happiness and the bliss is coming from the meditation. So
Yeah.
I found it's more like it's at the heart. It's through the concentration. I don't want to criticize too much. If you're not a monk or a nun, of course you can do that. But I think for me personally, I just felt that I like that when you're in the sort of blissfulness of meditation, you can be in it for a long time. Very peaceful, very happy. It's blissful. It's pleasurable, but it's also bringing a lot of meaning because you're working with the mind. So maybe you're feeling blissful and concentrated around a mind of pure love, and that for me has a lot more meaning. So I didn't find it a repressive thing that I was like pushing down anything. It's just that energy was more at the heart and more to do with concentration and enjoying the peace of the mind. And there were other reasons why I wanted to be a nun. It's coming back to me now. One was that I didn't want to be an object of attachment for others. So in Buddhism we have this idea of attachment, which is that you want another person to make you happy, which actually is impossible. Happiness comes from within. And often in a relationship we kind of have quite strong attachment and we mutually sustain it. So in the beginning we kind of exaggerate how attractive that person is, and we project all these good qualities onto them. Like this person's, they're my goddess and they're going to make me happy. And then later on, when we feel that our needs aren't met and so on, we can feel the opposite towards them. Maybe we feel that this person is not fulfilling our wishes and we feel angry with them. So you get these very extreme minds and you get very caught up in that one person or maybe your family, like a small group. So I just sort of felt like I didn't want to be caught up in that. There is 10 commitments that we take as monks and nuns in the Kadampa tradition. Some of them are like promises that we make to avoid negative actions that harm ourselves or others, or obstruct us spiritually. So these are sort of basic things like not killing, not stealing, not lying, not taking intoxicants, so no alcohol or drugs, with the exception of medicinal things, not engaging in sexual activity, not engaging in meaningless activities. That's a pretty broad one. So that really means you have to check your intention. If you're home visiting your family, then of course you might watch a little bit of TV with them, but with this motivation to cherish them and not to be too weird. And
Yeah, but
this
then it
is this
becomes
kind of-
you're enjoying the experience together with your family and doing something with them.
Yeah, and also not so much about your enjoyment, but it's you're cherishing those people.
Okay.
Yeah, you're not. You go to a coffee house to drink a coffee with someone because you want to cherish them and love them, and so that's your intention. So it's not meaningless at all.
Yeah.
So actually, we have to judge ourselves if it's meaningless or only we know. Are we following our attachments, or is there some sort of meaning there? So that's number 6.
Yeah.
To reduce our desire for worldly pleasures. But again, it doesn't mean that you never experience those worldly pleasures. We still need to eat and drink and so on, but you're reducing your attachment to it. You're not seeing it as a true source of happiness. Then to maintain the commitments of refuge, which is basic sort of Buddhist vows, basically means that you're seeking your ultimate protection from your spiritual practice. So we try to keep the commitments of refuge and to practice the 3 higher trainings, which are higher moral discipline, concentration and wisdom. And that's the actual practice of ordination. It means moral discipline is holding yourself back from negative actions with a good motivation, and practicing or engaging in positive actions with a good motivation. So it's our morality, it's our ethics. So another way of saying it would be ethical behavior. So doing that with the motivation to attain permanent liberation from the delusions, the mistaken minds. We call that nirvana or liberation. Higher wisdom is a type of meditation in particular. It's a little bit like Matrix, you know, it's realizing that the true nature of reality, and that is the actual liberating mind. We say emptiness, the true nature of reality. It's not nothingness, it's how things actually exist as opposed to the way they appear to exist. So we think everything exists outside of the mind. We don't realize that we're creating the appearance, and that it is just an appearance, like a dream in a sense. So this is maybe a little more complicated to explain, but that's at the root of all of the other mistaken minds. Because I think I truly exist, I think you truly exist, and I think I'm more important, and then I want the things that I think will make me happy. I develop attachment, I want to push away everything that makes me unhappy, I develop anger, and all the whole mess of the delusions begins to arise. So if you can cut that root ignorance, that root fundamental unknowing, confusion about reality, you actually can cut the root of all of the mistaken minds. So ultimately that is the goal of ordination, is to attain liberation.
Do you find to truly be able to understand something, you need to know the opposite of it? So like, do you ever have to go to like a negative practice or experience or explore something that's more a negative thing to know what it's about? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. There's not so many people that would ask that kind of question. First of all, the thing that first popped into my head is that in Buddhism we always talk about the middle way. So the middle way between the two extremes. So it's not that nothing exists, it's that things exist as appearances. And it's not that things, so you have these two extremes of everything seeming to be existent outside of the mind, and you have the other extreme of nothing exists. So Buddhism would come into the middle and say everything exists as an appearance, like a rainbow, it's an appearance. But it exists as an appearance. It doesn't exist as a truly existing thing, as more than an appearance, but it is not nothingness. And you would get the same with like not going to the extreme of spirituality, where you give away everything and you have not even the basics you need for your spiritual practice, but not going to the extreme of materiality, where you have no time or space for the spiritual practice and you're just concerned about all those material things. So the middle way would be, I need certain material things to sustain my spiritual practice. So we often talk about these middle way. And then your specific question is, do you need to experience an extreme of suffering to, in a sense, know the extreme of happiness?
Exactly,
And I would say no. our experience of happiness, if we check our own experience, it is not just defined in relation to suffering. Often our worldly experience of happiness is a reduction of suffering. But we don't call that real happiness. So it's like if you've been really sick for several days, you've had a terrible headache, and then it's gone, and you're like, oh, I'm so happy, my headache's gone. But actually, that's not real happiness, is it? It's just a reduction of suffering.
Yeah.
So in Buddhism, we're still suffering.
Yeah.
Yeah, we call that changing suffering. Where you sit for a long time, then you stand up, it feels better, but it's just a change in your suffering.
Yeah.
But the happiness that comes from this inner freedom, this inner liberation, this inner peace, you can abide in it for a long time, longer and longer periods of time. And you don't need a contrast to keep enjoying that experience. And I think you see some people are just generally happier, aren't they? And they're not happier because they have worse times.
Right.
They're just a happy person because they have good minds.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, they have loving minds,
That's
friendly
interesting. I like
minds.
that. Yeah.
So I don't think you need the extreme.
No.
But having said that, of course, sometimes when we look in our mind, maybe we look at our mistaken minds and we see that actually we have a lot of anger. That can be a little painful. Or we see, actually some selfishness in there. And that initial seeing, before you're able to change it, can be a little uncomfortable. And I think that can be a valuable process, just to see this is actually causing me suffering and pain. I want to be free from it. But you would then move on to the solution.
Yeah. Right, that's very interesting. I like that. So I have a question about meditation.
Sure.
So are there many ways to meditate, or is there only one?
There are certainly many people who use the word meditation
Okay.
to describe different things.
Okay.
So I guess in that sense you can say that there are many types of meditation because many people are using the same word. So I think it is really important to understand how that word is being used in whatever it is you're investigating. So in Buddhist meditation, we have a pretty clear definition of meditation, which is that it is a mental action. So you could sit in meditation and not be meditation, right? Your mind's everywhere. But it's a mental action that concentrates on a virtuous object or a positive object and is a cause of mental peace. That's how we define it. And we have two types of meditation. We have analytical meditation and placement meditation. So analytical meditation, we could say, is the same as contemplation. Thinking, but a purposeful way of thinking. Not thinking aimlessly, just whatever comes into your head. You're thinking in a purposeful way. So for example, if you want to meditate on love, you need to think about how to develop that mind of love. You need to look in your own mind in a sort of purposeful way of contemplation. And then when we contemplate, sorry, just saw someone I know. When we contemplate, or when we do contemplation meditation, very often we reach a conclusion in our mind, or some feeling, a special feeling in our mind, like we go, yeah, I get that. Yeah. That now is our object of meditation that we can concentrate on. So for example, if you decided I'm going to meditate on love, and maybe you've read something that you find can guide you to that state of mind.
Sure, yeah.
So then you contemplate it in your mind until you reach maybe a small feeling of love. That is your object of meditation. Then you try to hold it and just to stay with that feeling. Just in a sense, just to be love. To be with that, to stay with it, to hold it. And that's what we're not very good at in our modern society. We're quite good at thinking. But we're not good at staying with the conclusions. And maybe we think, but it's not very big feeling of love. But if you stay with it, it gets bigger. And just through that process, just through staying there, hold it, be there. There's some resistance initially, but then gradually you settle into that meditation object, and you can develop concentration, maybe 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour. So you're strengthening that mind.
Could you meditate while you're doing anything?
In a sense, yes. According to that strict definition, it's a mental action that concentrates on a positive object. So if you're in a shopping queue and you are consciously holding a mind of patience, you're meditating. If you're in a conversation with someone and you're consciously holding a mind of love, you're meditating. So what we find is that it helps a lot to train in formal meditation. Like you might go to a gym to train the body, but then you use your body in daily life, right? And makes many things easier.
Yeah.
So you train your mind in meditation with like a kind of controlled environment where there aren't lots of distractions and so on, and where you can concentrate on these special ways of thinking that maybe aren't our normal habits. So we're training. And then you take those minds and you try to put them into your daily life to make the daily life better, more meaningful, happier, less problems. So it's a huge emphasis to integrate it into daily life.
If you have like one last piece of advice, someone who would like to get into meditation, wants to do it more often, or someone who's looking for more of this kind of a thing, like more kind of this peaceful mind clarity, what's like one piece of advice that you would like to share?
Put it high up your priority list, because in our world we live in a materialistic age, and like an age of materiality where we're very focused on external things and we're very stimulated by our mobile telephones and so on. It's really easy to get sort of sucked into all of those external things and not make any time for this inner work. But I think if we connect to the understanding that our mind, our inner world, is determining our experience of our life, then that can help us to realize just how important it is to work with that inner world. There's a lot of suffering. A lot of people are suffering quietly, privately, inwardly suffering, and outwardly maybe looking very successful. I think we all suffer a lot. So I think it's just to try to prioritize this inner work. And if we don't prioritize it, we will just get busy with other things. So I see it all the time. If we get busy with other things, of course we get distracted and we get discouraged, and we think it's not working, or we lose sight of how well it's working. So prioritize it, I think.
Awesome. That's a great answer. Yeah. So someone that wants to learn more about you, what's the website? Like, where can they go?
It's in English, meditateInOslo.org, and in Norwegian it's meditationioslo.no. Most of our classes are in English, but some of our classes are in Norwegian.
Yeah.
And our main center is in Oslo, but we have some sort of satellite classes and branches and things. I think maybe it's important for people to know that they don't need to be Buddhist to come to the center, and that probably most people when they come are not Buddhist. They just want to learn meditation, and they want to draw inspiration from the Buddhist teachings, and that's completely fine. So within Buddhism, it's all about finding out the truth for yourself. So nothing is ever kind of forced or pushed.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.